Hello, Facebook. So I wanted to do this video, which I think is super important in order to further the conversation about COVID-19 and everything that's happening. Video is probably not what you're expecting when you read the title. Super important, especially if you're a parent, to pay attention to what happened to me. So for those of you that don't know, I am an asthmatic. I would say I'm a severe asthmatic if I'm actually having an asthma attack and if I get into my allergies. Most of the time, my asthma has been regulated my entire life. I've had asthma hereditary from my father's side since I was a kid. And from the first asthma attack that I had, I think I was about 8 years old. My lung collapsed. It was a big deal. I've had a few hospital stints. It's basically been under control for a long time. Then I got pregnant, and asthma has been a bit trickier since I've gotten pregnant. So I would say last night, as we were watching the debates for the last 48 hours, actually, I got into one of my allergies 48 hours ago, and it instantly sent me into having an asthma attack. And for those of you that don't know, asthma essentially just closes your lungs slowly. If you could picture two lungs just slowly constricting, that's what it's like when you're having an asthma attack. And there's nothing you can do to stop yourself and stop your lungs from constricting, but get an emergency inhaler, which will help you get some albuterol into your system, which fights it. Or you can go and you can get a medical treatment, which is called a nebulizer, which does the same thing in a longer form. So I thought after I got into my allergies 48 hours ago that I could fight it using an emergency inhaler, which I had my doctor call in, and I took some Zyrtec, and I took some Claritin, and I took my regular inhaler that I take daily. I thought to myself, okay, I'll be fine. And it wasn't. Last night after the debates, it got really bad. And my husband was like, do you want to go to the hospital? And I was thinking in my head, I should go to the hospital because my breathing is probably worse than it's been in decades. But at the same time, I was thinking, I'm almost 7 months pregnant. I don't know if I want to be in the hospital at this time because it just takes, when you go to the hospital, hours and hours before you can see a doctor. You're paying thousands of dollars. So I thought, let me wait until the morning to actually just go see my asthma specialist. So I go to an asthma clinic. It's an asthma and allergy clinic where two things happen at that clinic. They can treat you for asthma, or they can give you allergy shots and address your allergies. And it's a great clinic. I recommend all asthmatics have one of these clinics if you have them locally, these centers that actually specialize in asthmatics. So this morning I made an appointment first thing, and at 11 o'clock a.m., I got to the asthma center, and it's already confounding that when you're having an asthma attack, even if you go to these centers, they make you wear a mask. It is the exact opposite of what you should be doing when you are having an asthma attack. People that have asthma will relate to this. The last thing you want to do is constrict anything around your nasal passage or your mouth when you're barely breathing. I knew my oxygen levels were really low. I had woken up and taken my emergency inhaler about 20 times the night before, and it just wasn't getting into my lungs. So I got to the doctor's office, wore the mask, sucked it up. He saw me right away, brought me right into the room, and we went over some prescriptions that he could call in and some steroid inhalers that were safe for the baby because usually they'll just give you a shot of prednisone to just kind of jumpstart your system, which is a steroid, or put you on a tapering prednisone dose. But again, I'm pregnant, so these aren't the best options when you're having a baby. They can do it, but they would rather you try to stabilize your breathing with a pump. So he's writing these prescriptions, and he then decides to take my oxygen level and to listen to my lungs. And I think at that point, he just sort of realized, 'cause my asthma is pretty quiet, so until you're listening to me, you don't hear how bad it is. He realized that this was like an emergency situation and that I probably should have gone to the hospital the night prior. And he said to me, you need a nebulizer treatment right now. Well, good news, because I'm at an asthma clinic and they have these nebulizers in every single room. And he's like, okay, I'm going to go get your nebulizer treatment going and the nurse will come in and give it to you. I'm like, thank God I'm going to be able to breathe when all of this is over. He comes back and he says, because of COVID-19 restrictions, he is not allowed to give me the treatment that is right in front of me. I honestly couldn't believe it when he said it. I was just completely confounded with the situation. I'm looking at the treatment that I need that's going to help me breathe. He is telling me that he can't give it to me because if he gives it to me, it's a violation of COVID-19 restrictions, because obviously in order to take this machine, you hold it in your mouth and you breathe. So God forbid, I could be super spreading COVID-19. I do not have COVID-19, but it is now, they are now restricted and they are not allowed to give me this medicine that I basically need to save my life and to get medicine into my lungs. So at this point, he says, we need to call an ambulance and get you to the hospital. And that was the exact opposite of the reason that, I was there. I wanted to do the exact opposite. I knew he had the machine that I needed. I did not need to go pay for an ambulance, pay to go to the hospital, pay thousands of dollars when the machine is in front of me. And I said, I do not want to go in an ambulance and I do not want to go to the hospital. That doesn't make sense. That's going to take me hours to get the medicine that I need, because as you all know, when you call 911 and the paramedics come, that does not mean you're going to see a doctor as soon as you get to the hospital. And it sort of ran contrary to everything that they've been telling us. The hospitals are overflowing. If you can treat yourself in a doctor's office, if you can treat yourself at home, everybody should be staying home. Do what you can, save the nurses, right? Alleviate the nurses, our heroes. It's a burden in the hospital. Well, he's now trying to tell me that I need to fast line and get to the hospital. So I just did a quick equation in my head. So I have two options. He wants me to either go to the hospital, or he can call me in the prescription of prednisone, and the prednisone is going to work a lot faster for me than the hospital. If I had taken a prednisone pill at that time, it would have probably taken 20 minutes for it to kick in, and prednisone just completely, if you're an asthmatic, prednisone it's a life-saving drug. It can completely clear your lungs. It takes about 20 minutes, but once it gets in there, you're good. So I'm doing the calculations and I'm saying, call me the prescription of prednisone. CVS is right next door. I can grab my prescription and be out of here and breathing, even though I know that puts my fetus at risk. But it seemed like the right decision. So I said, I'm not going to the hospital. He then is so worried and frazzled because my oxygen levels are so low, not worried enough to give me the treatment that is, again, right in front of me, in the room, in front of him, because he cannot because of COVID-19 restrictions. But he does not want to let me walk out of the room. So he walks to the back and, unbeknownst to me, called the paramedics against my will. So I'm on my phone texting my husband, and I look up, and there are now 5 paramedics walking with a stretcher into my doctor's office, telling me that I need to go to the hospital. And I'm saying no. And this is the last thing, by the way, when you're having an asthma attack. This is causing me anxiety. I'm stressing out. It makes your breathing worse. Like, the number one thing when you're having an asthma attack is you need to just stay completely calm, because any emotion, any upset, any anxiety, it makes the constriction happens faster. And I'm sitting here saying, I'm not getting on this stretcher. I got myself here. You're telling me to get on the stretcher, to go to the hospital, to give me what is right there. I mean, I could not think of anything that is more against the Hippocratic Oath than a doctor refusing you life-saving treatment that he has at his disposal because of COVID-19 restrictions that make no sense. I'm not COVID-19 positive, right? So these are just restrictions that exist, and he cannot give me life-saving treatment. So I now have 4 paramedics in the room. So much for social distancing, who are trying to talk me into going to the hospital, and at the same time giving me a breathing pump to breathe into, which is, I guess it was a stronger form of albuterol, which I had already been taking all day to make it so that I'm okay enough to go to the hospital. So finally, the head nurse says, can she take the albuterol treatment downstairs in the truck? And the paramedic says, yes, we can give her it here and she doesn't have to go to the hospital. Great. I'm in. Sounds great. I need the treatment. If it's downstairs and it's in the paramedics and in the ambulance, great, I'll take it. So I go downstairs and I get into the ambulance, and the first thing that happens is the woman says to me, we're not allowed to give you the albuterol treatment in the ambulance because it's against COVID-19 restrictions. I wish I was making this up. That part to me sounds like it's the craziest thing I've ever heard. They are not allowed to now. They can't do it at the doctor's office. Now they cannot do it in the ambulance. So they're essentially saying, we are willing to take a chance of letting you die, right? Because we are now restricted. We cannot give it to you in the ambulance because of COVID-19 restrictions as well, but we can give it to you on the sidewalk. We can make an exception. So I now have the option of getting an asthma treatment in broad daylight in the middle of Georgetown, Washington, D.C., or get taken to a hospital in which they are telling me there is a pressurized room where I will be allowed to breathe into this tube that is readily available all over this asthma clinic. Am I crazy? Are they crazy? Has the world gone crazy? Is this completely the most maddening thing I've ever heard in my entire life? So I'm freaking out. And at that point, my husband was there, and we have a security team who had the car right in front of the ambulance. And I said, would you be allowed to let me take the treatment in our personal car? And they were like, yeah, that's totally fine. So the paramedic gave me my nebulizer treatment inside of our personal car, allowed me to close the door and take the treatment that I could have gotten at least an hour earlier had this whole thing not unfolded. This is what's going on all across America. They don't care if you die. They didn't care that I was 7 months pregnant. They don't care that I was having an asthma attack. They don't care that what comes with obviously solving an asthma attack is the patient has to be able to breathe. They're willing to allow people to die, okay? And it's very clear the doctor understood that that was a potential consequence, which is why he called the paramedic almost as an insurance to him, because if I had died, I can't think of a greater example of medical malpractice than a doctor refusing you treatment on the basis of they don't want you to breathe in the room. I mean, that was it. They didn't know. They didn't want me breathing in the room. They had restrictions. And I don't even fault my allergist for this, because his medical license could have been revoked. You know what I mean? So this is literally what he's being told, that even if he has a patient that is dying of asthma in front of him, that has a low oxygen level, he is not allowed to issue any treatment because of COVID-19 restrictions. The ambulance is not allowed to issue any treatment. A simple nebulizer. If you guys knew, I know some of you guys have asthma, if you knew how simple this treatment is, it is just, it takes 5 minutes to let me breathe into this machine that will completely calm me down. Instead, they're telling me I've got to pay for paramedics, I've got to pay to go to a hospital, I've got to pay to go to a special region in the hospital so I can take this simple machine that is readily available that would bring me back down to normal. And had I not have had my security team on standby, I would have had to taken this nebulizer treatment in the middle of the street at Georgetown. How is this legal because of COVID-19? How many people die from COVID-19 versus how many people die when they can't breathe and they're having an asthma attack and they're being refused medicine? I would guess it's 100%, because there's nothing, like I said, when you're having an asthma attack and your lungs are getting tired and tired, there's nothing you can do but get the medicine into your lungs. And this happened this morning. I kind of wanted to have this discussion with you guys openly, because we're getting to a point now where I just don't see how this is not a law. I can't hear the situation and understand how this is not a lawsuit. How we are now having doctors actively refuse treatment to so many people because of COVID-19 restrictions that are being placed on them. This is against the Hippocratic Oath. This is against everything that the left swears they stand on. Black Lives Matter? Guess not. We need to support our nurses and make sure the hospitals aren't overwhelmed. Guess not. Social distance? Guess not. None of it matters, because none of the restrictions make sense. And, I'm appreciative to the paramedics were saying they thought it was the craziest thing they ever heard. Me pointing to the medicine right there that they're telling me I need to get into a hospital to go get. And I, appreciate all of the emergency personnel that were involved in this situation. But at the same time, something is going really wrong in this country right now. And we know that the reasons for this are entirely political. So I just wanted to share the story with you guys. It was super hard to go through this morning, but I wanted to just make all of you guys aware, especially those of you who have kids who have asthma, because I know when I was a child and I had asthma, I don't even know how much I would have freaked out during that situation. And, this is why the president has been fighting against this and saying that more people are dying because of these lockdowns and because of these restrictions. When you can't get the medical help that you need because of restrictions, then we're no longer having a medical professional personnel that care about their patients at all. So thank you guys for watching. Want to share the story with you, and definitely drop in the comments. And if you are a medical professional, please tell me how any of that was legal. Thanks. Bye.